Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio and welcome to week 37 of the Stash Buster block series. Our block this week is called Cornerstone, and this looks a lot like the Quatrefoil block, and in fact it's kind of the same. It just has different colors and the layout's a little bit different, but this one goes together pretty easily. We've got two different units. We have a 4-patch, and then we have a flying geese unit, and then we have the big square in the center. So if you've done the Quatrefoil block, this one will be easy, and just breaking this one down into its units makes it easy to do. So I hope you will stay with me, and I'll show you how to make this block. Okay, here are the fabrics that you're going to need for the Cornerstone block. For your light fabric, you're going to need 20 pieces that are 2.5 inches square. For your medium fabric, you're going to need one piece that is 4.5 inches square, and then 4 pieces that are 2.5 inches square. For your dark, you will need 8 pieces that are 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So you have rectangles here. So when you look at the block, what we have a 4-patch unit, and then we have a flying geese that is attached to a rectangle, and then we have a center square. So we're going to do the 4 patches first, and to do that I'm going to sew one white square to the blue square, which would be your medium fabric, your light to the medium, and we're going to make 4 of those. So we're going to do that first. So let's go to the sewing machine. Now the trick to this block is to kind of hold off on the pressing a bit until you get a little bit further in. And I'm going to do this 4-patch first. And so I have my medium 2.5 inch square and my light 2.5 inch square, and we're going to sew one onto each blue here, and we'll make 4 of those. I'm just going to chain piece them together. And the thread I have is the thread that I am using is a 50 weight. It's So Fine by Superior. And I have that in the needle as well as the bobbin. Okay, got all of those, and I'm going to come apart and I'm going to set them aside for a minute, and then I'm going to sew the other 2 pieces together, and those are just going to be white pieces, and I need to make 4 more units, so I need 8 of these squares. So you've got 8, you should have 8 left when you get done with this. So I'm just going to take 2 of them and sew them together and make 4 sets of these. Okay, now we're going to go and do some pressing. Okay, I'm going to start with the blue and the white pieces, and this one's going to go against the general rule for piecing and pressing. You normally press towards the dark. On this one you're going to press towards the light, and what that's going to do is make it easier to sew this unit on to this unit here. So there's a method behind my madness here. Those seams will nest better, and they will actually nest, and the units will go together better. So that's why we're doing that. So press towards the light. Use steam if you want to. Okay, got those done, and then of course the two whites just press to one side. Now this Cornerstone block is a lot like the Quatrefoil block. It's the piecing is pretty much the same. It's just there's different colors laid out in different areas. So if this looks familiar, that's why. It's the same pattern as the Quatrefoil block. Okay, now I'm going to sew these together, and I want to nest those seams. So I've got them going in opposite directions, and I just kind of push them up against each other till they kind of interlock. And then we're going to sew down one side. Okay, I'm just going to chain piece these all together. And when we get done, we should have 4 units. Okay, time to do more pressing. On the back of this block, you can see how I pressed all the seams of the blue squares out. So they're not pressed in, they're pressed out. So we're going to do the same for this. And once again, that goes against what you've probably ever learned about pressing when you're piecing a block, is to press towards the dark. But we're going to press towards the light just to make life easier for us down the row. So, and I'm all about that right now. There are a lot of difficult things in the world, so we don't need to make our piecing any more difficult than it is. Okay, now we're going to make the flying geese units. So we need these, you should have 8 2.5-inch squares left, and then you have take 4 of your 2.5-inch by 4.5-inch rectangles and put the other 4 aside. You don't need those right now. So we're going to sew these, and we're going to sew these on here. Okay, I'm going to use my template, and I'm just going to use a pencil and draw a diagonal line. And this will be a line that I will sew on, so this will not show up in the quilt. So I'm going to take 8 of these and draw that line on them. Now, if you're really good at eyeballing a straight line on a square like this, then you may not need to draw this line. And I'll tell you, half the time I will draw the line, half the time I don't. So you know, do whatever works for you. So I can eyeball this pretty well, and my machine pulls straight. My sewing machine, it doesn't pull to one side, so it's easy to do. But if your machine likes to pull to one side and you're fighting that, it would probably be easier just to have all of these drawn out for you, and that way you know you're getting a straight line when you're sewing. Okay. So now let's go make some flying geese units. I'm going to take these rectangles and take one of the squares, and I want the diagonal line to go from the center to the opposite corner. What I don't want is, well, you could do it this way, but I want to do it here. When we get this one, it's not going to matter which way you lay it to begin with, but when you get to doing this one, it is going to be important. So we're going to go ahead and sew right on that line that is drawn on the 2.5-inch square. Okay, going to move that out a little ways and do another one. I'm just chain piecing them together. Okay, now I'm going to cut these apart. Okay, now I'm going to trim off this part of the triangle right here. I'm going to trim that off, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to do that with my scissors. You can certainly do it with your rotary cutter and a ruler. And then you can save these little triangle pieces for a confetti quilt or whatever you want. Okay, now we're going to press, and we're going to press this open so that it'll look like this. I'm going to press towards the dark again on this one. And now I'm ready to put on, the other side of the Flying Geese unit. So let's do this. What we need to do is to line up the other 2.5 inch square, and the line that we drew needs to go from the center to the opposite corner. So we're going to chain piece all of these together and finish up all 4 Flying Geese. Okay, I'm going to trim these off too. And I'm going to press those. Okay, so here we've got the Flying Geese unit. I'm going to press this one away from the center triangle. So you're pressing towards the dark again. There's a lot of that in this block. But with Flying Geese, you usually do press your seam away from your center triangle. So that is normal for this block. Okay, so now what we need to do is to sew Flying Geese units to the 4 remaining rectangles that you have. So we're just put them right sides together and sew at the base of the Flying Geese. That's the side that you need to sew on. So you don't have to match any points or anything on this one. So we're just going to sew those all together. Alright, now I'm going to cut them apart and we'll press, and then we'll lay out the block. For these Flying Geese units, what you want to do is you want to press away from the geese. So you want to press towards this rectangle. So we're going to turn the rectangle side up and press that open. And this purple fabric I have here, this is a Kona cotton. So it's real nice fabric. Okay, now we can lay the block out, and I'm going to start with the center, which is our medium 4.5 inch square. And then the 4 patch units go in the corners, and the medium square goes towards the middle square. So it all goes like this. And then these units, the flying geese, are on the outside. Like this. Oops. I'll drop that one. Okay. So now we can sew these rows together. And we need to match points now. We've got where these triangles of the flying geese come out. We need to match that to the seams on the block next to it. So that is why I had you press it this way, so that you can see that. So you want to sew this unit, these 2 units together, and you want to sew it so that you can see this here. And as I always, in all the videos that I've done with flying geese, whenever you've got where these lines are crossing here, this is where you want to stitch right across that and just to the outside of that by a thread or 2, and that will give you a nice sharp point. And sometimes that's hard to do, but that's your goal. You want to hit that. So nest your seams together. So that should be easy to do since your seams are pressed in opposite directions. So that should be easy to do, but you want to try and hit that. So we're going to go to the sewing machine and see how well we can do that. Okay, on this one I'm not sure I'm going to hit that very well. We'll see. Yeah, there it helps. Helps to get that. Okay. Let's see how that one went. It's pretty good. So here we go. This point here is what I was aiming at. I was trying to get that to look pretty close to that. So I'm going to add the other 4 patch unit on and see if we can get that one to look as good. Okay, I really had to slow down on that one. And this one kind of slipped on me, so this one did not turn out as well. Let's go see how the other rows go. Now the next row, you don't have anything you have to match up, so you can just zip on through that one. Okay, here's row 2. And then row 3. that one. So let's press the rows and sew them together. Now I'm sewing together the first 2 rows, and we have seams and points to match where those flying geese in there at the seam. So you want to stitch just 1 or 2 threads to the right hand side of that point, and I think you can see that. If you look really closely, you can see where there's just a little bit of space there between the row I just stitched and where those threads cross at the corner of that flying geese unit. And that will give you a nice crisp point when you open up those rows and press them, because the fabric, when you press it to one side, will take up a little space, and that will give you that leeway. If you give it a couple of threads there, that'll give it that extra leeway it needs to let that point show. Now you can pin your rows together if you're more comfortable with that. I didn't do that here in this video. I'm just using my fingers to make sure those seams are nested together, and I'm watching the points on the flying geese units to make sure that I am not stitching too close to them, which would cause that point to be blunted when the rows are finished. So just take your time. Slowing down helps a lot, and I think you'll get a nice look if you just slow down, take your time, and watch those points, and just keep just to the right of them by 1 or 2 threads. I have the Cornerstone blocks pinned up on my design wall. It's with my new setup, it's a little hard to get them all to fit on my little table. So this block is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way you turn it. You're going to get the same look whenever you put them side by side. But you can see in the center where it makes like a secondary design, which is kind of a shadow of what the colored pieces in the block look like. So I think that's kind of interesting. So that gives you an idea of what a quilt full of these blocks would look like when they're set side by side. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.